Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. Houston Rockets fans, I am extremely excited to be covering your favorite team here, the Houston Rockets, with a 2025 NBA trade guide. If you've been watching the channel for a while now, you know that I think the future of the NBA might just be sitting there in Houston with the young core nucleus that the Houston Rockets have, all of the access to extra draft picks, the ability to make a big time trade. And we're going to talk about all of that in today's video and more. Before we jump into that though, first of all, I want you guys to leave a like and subscribe. Let me know that I'm doing a good job. And then in the comment section, I need you all to go comment right now down below, who is your favorite current Houston Rocket? Are you an Alperen Şengün fan? Is it Jalen Green? Is it Amen Thompson? Is it Cam Whitmore, maybe even as a little bit of a sleeper option? Is it Jabari Smith Jr.? Who is it? Is it Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet? Is it one of those veterans? Let me know down in the comment section below. I'm sure Tari Eason has a huge fan base as well. There's so many great options on the Rockets roster, which is why I want to know right now, who is your favorite present Houston Rocket? And now let's jump forward into that video preview. In today's video, we're going to talk about the tradable players and contract situations. We're going to try to avoid talking about the core 7 specifically as trade assets, but they are essential cogs in any potential big time trade, so keep that in mind. We're going to cover both small possible trades and big ones in this video, so there's a lot of different optionality and flexibility for Rafael Stone and Ime Udoka to look into if the Rockets were to make any big time trades. We're going to look at the draft pick situation. The Rockets have a real collection of draft picks to work with. Obviously such a key essential starting point for any big time trades to even materialize. We're then going to look at the Rockets and long-term cap space, something that was a pretty big rumor that maybe they could have went in that direction. We'll talk about if that's still a possibility or not for them after the extensions of Alperen Şengün and Jalen Green. We're then going to discuss if they're a buyer or maybe even potentially a seller of some of their veterans. I think you guys probably already know the answer to that though. And then the projected activity level for this Houston Rockets team. Will they be active? Will they be patient? Will they be taking calls? Will they be making calls? We'll talk about all of that in today's video. Starting now with the tradable players I could see potentially being available to be had via trade, and a lot of this has to do with the actual contracts that Houston has currently on their roster. So again, we're going to avoid talking about the core 7 right now, and instead we're going to focus on some of the movable pieces, some of the movable players that are on the fringe of the roster, or the fringe of the rotation, or maybe just backup pieces. Starting with Steven Adams, who they acquired last year in a trade with Memphis for a collection of second-round picks. I really loved the deal at the time for Houston. I don't think Steven Adams is going to be readily available, but he is on a very movable contract. 1 year, $12.6 million. Expiring contracts are like gold this time of the year. Any team looking to open up flexibility, find potential avenues to cap space, or to open up room for extensions, expiring contracts are extremely valuable. So even if Houston did not necessarily want to trade Steven Adams, I could see a potential pathway where that becomes somewhat essential for them if a certain kind of deal materializes for them. Now again, that's a big if, and I'm not expecting that to happen presently, but I did want to discuss that in this video. We also have a lot of other contracts that Houston could theoretically throw into trades, specifically with Jock Landale. His contract is essentially an expiring contract for multiple years, and what I mean by that, the way his contract is built, the Rockets basically have him as a walking trade exception, making $8 million a year, completely non-guaranteed for future seasons. Jock Landale is racking up paycheck after paycheck, and Houston is keeping him around for flexibility via trade, something very important to note. Jae'Sean Tate also on an expiring deal, 1 year, $7.5 million. Again, a very tradable contract, one I could see them looping into a deal if they need to find money, find pathways to open up flexibility. And then Aaron Holiday as well. He has a team option, so functionally, again, another expiring contract. This is part of the genius behind the Houston Rockets front office and the way that they've been so successful. Not only have they been hitting in the draft, both with their top end picks and then also picks outside of the lottery, but they've also been doing a very good job maintaining flexibility by signing players to somewhat unique contracts. Jock Landale, again, a multi-year contract without guarantees. Very unique in the NBA. Not very often you see something like that. It's almost like a football or a baseball contract. Aaron Holiday, a team option. Again, not super common in the NBA. He has a club option here for a little bit under $5 million next season. So the Rockets have been very smart, very responsible with their cap management, and I think that puts them in a real advantageous position when it comes to the trade deadline and making potential trades with other teams. When it comes to draft picks, Not only do the Rockets have a lot of them, they have a lot of potentially good draft picks as well. They have the 2025 swap option with the Phoenix Suns. They also have the Phoenix first round pick in 2027. They have the Brooklyn Nets swap option still in 2027 as well. They also have 2 extra 2029 first round picks, which would be the most favorable of either the Mavs, Suns, or Rockets. So they get the 2 best of those 3 picks, which is awesome. They have real draft pick flexibility here with future swap options over teams, and those swap options like Brooklyn, for example, like Dallas, like Phoenix, depending on how those franchises operate over the next 4 or 5 years, there could be some real positive upside picks. Someone like an AJ DeBonce out of BYU, maybe a Carmelo Anthony's son at Syracuse up in the future coming drafts, but they still do owe their own 2026 first round pick, which is top 4 protected out the door. So even though Houston has some added flexibility this year, they also are at kind of a pick deficit just slightly with their own pick in 2026 being out the door, but their collection of 2027s, 2029 first more than makes up for that missing pick that they still owe to Oklahoma City, part of the Russell Westbrook Chris Paul trade from Daryl Morey's tenure in Houston. Sliding in here now to whether or not I think the Rockets are going to be able to operate with a long-term cap space. For me, it is presently unlikely to see Houston prioritizing cap space over the cap holds and current contracts on their roster. We've talked about how they've been creative in maintaining their financial flexibility. A lot of that has come by paying out contracts to role players like Jock Landale, like having Jayshawn Tate on a pretty team-friendly deal. Having these tradable contracts around, while it doesn't allow them to operate with cap space after signing Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks, what it does allow Houston to do is instead make trades in the marketplace, and I think that's the direction Houston is more so leaning, especially with how pre-agency has maybe even overtaken free agency in the NBA, with star players asking to get traded rather than just leaving their team in free agency. It's been a more cohesive unit between star player and team X, Y, or Z when it comes to facilitating trades, helping initiate rebuilds, rather than what happened, say, in 2010 when LeBron left the Cavaliers for Miami. It's a healthier system we have now set up where teams who are losing star talent at least get replenished with draft picks. They get replenished with some young players and expiring salary. And Houston clearly is swimming like a shark, swimming like a predator at this point, waiting to pounce on prey, and that prey being a team that has to trade a star player at some point in time. Houston, they have so many young players. They signed the extensions for Green and Şengün. I just don't think that they're going to prioritize cap space at any point in the near future, which is completely okay, and it doesn't mean that they don't have flexibility. It just means they're not going to be huge players for any max contracts out in free agency without a sign and trade. However, I still think that they're going to be big-time buyers, and I have an asterisk there next to the word buyer, because yes, we are talking about the 2025 NBA trade deadline. No, that doesn't mean I necessarily think that they will be a big-time buyer this February. I think there's going to be some real patience that has to be exercised here, and if you're a Houston Rockets fan, this is a very great year to enjoy. Your team is very good. You're playing high-level basketball. You're extremely young. A lot of your young players, young pieces are experiencing winning in the NBA for the very first time ever, and with that is going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and with that is also going to be some bumps in the road, and I think we've seen some of those bumps. Jalen Green, on nights, off nights. We've seen it with Alperen Şengün at the beginning of the season. Wasn't really connecting on his shots the way that we're accustomed to seeing Alperen Şengün doing so. And Thompson, there's still learning moments for him every single night, although I think he's just an excellent young player. Tari Eason continues to take steps forward every single night, seemingly putting together pieces offensively for what I think could become a real high-level offensive player in the future. Right now, obviously, he's flashing the defense every single night. There's just so much talent here. We haven't even really seen as much Reed Sheppard as I think we really should because of how good of a prospect Reed Sheppard was. The Rockets are positioned to be buyers, but it might not be this year, which is okay, because the Rockets, if they wait, if they're patient, they're going to have a better understanding of what this team needs. And as you can see on the graphic, there's Devin Booker sitting in a Houston Rockets jersey. If you want to see that right now, go check out my Phoenix Suns rebuild up on the channel. Devin Booker may or may not have gotten traded in that video to start off the series. But what I do want to talk about specifically in regard to Devin Booker and the Houston Rockets, in my rebuild series, yes, I did trade Devin Booker to Houston. What I do think, though, is in real life, if a trade for Devin Booker does occur, which I think very likely could happen to Houston, it would not happen until the offseason. And the reasoning for that, with Jalen Green's new extension, Jalen Green's going to get a massive pay raise, essentially going from his rookie scale numbers up to $30+ million a year. And that $30 million a year makes it a lot easier to match the money for a trade for Devin Booker, which means in addition to Jalen Green, you don't have to send out all of this other extra salary. You just have to send out a couple of other pieces. Could that be a Jabari Smith Jr. going into his final year of his rookie contract? Could that be a Cam Whitmore? Could it be a Reed Shepherd even? There's a variety of different young players Houston has that it could potentially dangle in a trade to the Phoenix Suns. Obviously, there's going to be some quarreling back and forth between those two teams if talks ever do really initiate and then ramp up. But the whole key point here is Houston doesn't need to rush into a trade because Jalen Green's contract, which will likely be included in any big trade anyway, becomes a lot easier to move actually when he gets a huge pay raise, even though that's, kind of contradictory thinking to how normally trades work. The cheaper players are usually more valuable in a lot of ways. His number being high allows them to match the salary for Devin Booker a lot easier without having to include Dillon Brooks, without having to include other players. So keep that in mind, Rockets fans. This is a great year to learn about your team more. It's a great year to enjoy winning for the first time in a while after James Harden. And it's also a great opportunity for the Rockets to be patient, wait for Jalen Green's extension to kick in, and then look to make an aggressive move at that point in time. And here are three teams that they can maybe make that kind of trade with. The Phoenix Suns, who we've already talked about, centered around Devin Booker. I do not think trading for a 36, about to be 37-year-old Kevin Durant makes any sense. I just would not go that direction if I was the Houston Rockets. I think the real plan, the real outlook of this team is to build around someone who is on a similar-ish timeline to Alperen Sengun. Now, it's hard to find 22, 23-year-old players who are going to be on that timeline. So looking at a 27, 28-year-old Devin Booker, I think makes a bit more sense anyway than it would with a 36-year-old Kevin Durant. The Milwaukee Bucks are another option for Houston, to explore trades with. Now, this one, again, the timeline's a little bit shakier. Giannis Antetokounmpo already into his 30s. If Giannis becomes available, he's one of the three best players in the world right now. So that is something that I do think, regardless of the age, Houston should do their due diligence, see what a package would have to look like for Milwaukee to accept. And with the assets that they have, the extra Nets pick, the extra Suns picks, the extra Mavericks pick, the Rockets have the ability to make big-time trades and swing for the fence with a variety of different players, including maybe De'Aaron Fox of the Sacramento Kings. So, all in all, I think Houston's in a position to really make a real pursuit at a star player. Now, they will get expensive pretty soon in the future with Şengün's extension, potential future extensions to Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, Amen Thompson. They will get expensive over time, but I think right now Houston has the core infrastructure in place, the young talent in place, to seriously have a elongated championship potential window if they make the right trade for a superstar 1A player. That's what I've been talking about on the channel for about 2 years now. I have been hyping this up for longer than pretty much anybody because the writing was on the wall with the assets that the Houston Rockets had. At first, it was just the Brooklyn Nets picks. They decided to cash those in for Suns picks instead, and I think that alleviates some of the potential long-term concerns about Phoenix. If they were to trade Devin Booker for their own picks back, they could enter a rebuild and tank potentially. So I think that was Houston's long-term plan here, and if they can find a way to walk out with Devin Booker specifically, or Giannis, or De'Aaron Fox, this team is going to be looking very, very scary in short order. So when it comes to projected activity level, for all of the reasons I have talked about so far in this video, I think patience is a virtue. If I had to use 4 words to sum up the rest of this season for the Houston Rockets and what's super important for them, my 4 words would be patience is a virtue. And I think that specifically should be the motto of the Houston Rockets for the rest of the season. Not only are they fun, exciting, good, young right now, but they have the real opportunity to step on the accelerator, step on the gas just right at the right moment, and turn this team from a fun, frisky, playoff-bound team to a serious title contender, not just next season, but for multiple years on end. And I think looking at how this rebuild has gone post-James Harden, they had shaky returns. Remember, they tried to step on the accelerator right away, getting Victor Oladipo as a part of a multi-team trade when James Harden was dealt. They did not get Jarrett Allen in that deal, which was interesting to me and something I didn't like at the time. But as this has marinated, as this rebuild has progressed, the Houston Rockets have stepped on the gas at the right moments. They've made the right draft picks. They've made the right decisions. They've traded the right veterans. They were savvy in acquiring Steven Adams last year, even though they weren't a winning team. Everything that Houston has done post James Harden trade has worked relatively well for them. They gave up on Kevin Porter Jr. at the right time. Everything has just slightly worked right for them, and they're trending really in a real positive direction because of that. They lost for long enough. They're starting to win some games. Last year was a real success for them, signing both Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. That was a huge decision, one that was met with a lot of criticism, by the way. I really like the Dillon Brooks contract, and I quite like the Fred VanVleet one. I would have preferred Harden for them in a reunion, but I understand why they didn't go that way. And VanVleet's a good player. Dillon Brooks is a good player. The Rockets are really talented, really deep. They're going to be able to sustain this winning for a long time, and they're one win-now move away from really being a real threat in the Western Conference. And that player to me is Devin Booker. I've been saying it for a while now. I think Devin Booker is the player that completes this Houston Rockets team. I'm very excited about the future of Houston Rockets basketball. If you're a Rockets fan, you should be as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Really hope you guys did enjoy today's video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more future content. Remember, we will be live on the channel for the NBA trade deadline all week of the trade deadline, so stick around here. This is the best place to be. Go check out that Phoenix Suns rebuild as well, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.